to the chaos. I'm Jill Savage. Today is Thursday, September 12th. During Tuesday's debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, Trump said that Harris wants to, quote, do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. Now, Time magazine rushed to fact check this claim, and they issued an embarrassing correction on Wednesday, likely due to this clip.
I made sure that they changed the policy in the state of California so that every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access to the medical care that they desired and need.
Here to discuss is Matthew Peterson, editor-in-chief of Blaze News, and Chris Bedford, senior editor for politics and Washington correspondent for Blaze Media. So, Chris, I mean, this is kind of embarrassing, but how did Time magazine actually go out there and try to defend Kamala Harris?
Well, they live in a total bubble. One where their viewpoints aren't challenged, one where they're just quick to dismiss these sorts of things, and one where, because of that, they're often not used to actually having to check their facts, not used to actually having to push back and say, look back and say, where could I be wrong here? Where could I be being led astray? In the business that all three of us are in, we're very used to this, where you have to double check. You can't just go off of some blog. You can't just go from your hip. You have to actually be able to verify and show, because a lot of folks are going to try and dismiss you and say, well, I didn't read that in Time magazine. By the way, how many times has Time magazine gone bankrupt? That's an interesting question. It used to be like a serious magazine, but now it seems to be something you occasionally see at airports and that puts out stories like this. But there's just there's so many assumptions. There's so many different things. And I'm writing right now for the Beltway Brief, for example, about how if you Google Haitians cats, all you get is article after article after article of people saying, this is an unproven myth, because they're going off of a town manager's point of view who's not answering his phone anymore and really has a vested interest in not talking about this. All these things are written by reporters who just take one government official's word over another one, mind you, have never been to this town and aren't thinking very deeply about these issues. And that sort of arrogance does occasionally lead them astray.
Well, that's unfortunate because they don't even see Matthew Peterson's great cat memes that he's created.
I didn't create any memes. That was the AI. It accidentally happened. I think this is significant right now because the fact check regime has been one that we've all lived under for a long time. And listening to what you're saying and looking around the room, you know, of this country in the last week, I feel like that regime is significantly weakened. This is still what they all do, but it's become routine. And you can sort of sense with the glee about the cat memes and, what's going on in Ohio, that they've almost been caught in a trap. It's almost as if, some people say, well, you should never put out these memes because you don't actually know if a cat was eaten or whatever. And on the other end of it, it's like, look what's behind door number one. You came here to tell me that, I don't know who's saying it, but no cats have been eaten, right? And then the entire right's going, oh, look at this, a city with 20,000 migrants and all these problems, right? So it almost feels like the right has learned how to weaponize this, maybe in a positive way, but am I overreaching?
Excuse me. I don't think so at all. It's like you've been reading my mind, because it's been what I've been writing about right now. What an incredible bet it is for corporate media to make that a migrant community from literally the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, a place where every aid project ever tried has gone to fail and die, a place where, according to a 2010 New York Times article, between 50 and 95% of the population practices either full-blown voodoo or just mixes it into their diet. That our credibility as media reporters is staked on the fact that no one from that population, which doesn't really have hunting licenses and doesn't really have agriculture and doesn't really have a lot of the things that we take for granted, no one's actually eating people's pets. No one's actually eating the birds. I mean, I was talking to Julio Rosas today, our reporter who's there, and he's been there all week, and he'll be back there next week. And some of the way that the city council and the city officials are responding really reminded me of where I lived in Washington, D.C. for years. As I was moving my family out of town, because it become incredibly unsafe. Well, every single member of the officer class of our Knights of Columbus chapter who was around the same age was doing the same thing and leaving our parish and moving because of the danger. Our elected officials were telling us there is no crime spree. What are you talking about? None of this is happening. Now, the job of a reporter is actually to go beyond that and to maybe check it out and maybe ask some questions and talk to some locals and some people who may have a differing point of view. But instead, you see J.D. Vance, the vice presidential candidate up there, and the senator from Ohio, talking about how he's been receiving phone calls about this. But even if this is just some kind of meme, we need to talk about 20,000 migrants from this culture, voodoo migrants from a culture and the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere moving into Springfield, Ohio, and how it's actually changed things and the problems it's caused for residents. And Caitlin Collins was repeating like it was some kind, like a child with her hands in her ears. The city manager said this didn't happen. The city manager said it didn't happen. Again, the city, it was a life raft to cling to. And that's just not a very steady life craft when you're dealing with Haitians.
Well,
it's absolutely ridiculous, right? It's absolutely ridiculous that this did not happen. This never happened. Who said it happened? A bunch of residents said it happened. It didn't happen because the city manager will declare. Exactly. 20,000 Haitian migrants. And you think that something like this didn't happen? That's nuts. That just doesn't make any logical sense.
don't believe your lying eyes.
It's all to hide the obvious truth. They're not going to hide it, right? They're caught in a trap. It's sticky. And now every fact check is going to lead people to go, what's going on in Springfield, Ohio? What's going on there? And we're going to publish more articles about it, showing people the truth beyond who cares about the ducks and the geese at a certain point, right? We care about what's actually going on in people's lives there. And then every day it's in the news, it's making people remember, like, wait a minute, I'm pretty sure that 50 people couldn't fit for some reason on Martha's Vineyard, which accommodates 200,000 people a year, right? Every summer. They couldn't accommodate 50 migrants.
Not even for 48 hours.
Not for, yes.
They were gone so fast.
Less than 48 hours, National Guard. See ya. We were enriched.
Got a lot of cats and dogs need to protect.
They did.
Absolutely.
They did.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, this was a big part of the debate, right? This was on the debate stage. Donald Trump said that. But we get today the news that Donald Trump, he put out on True Social that he doesn't want to have another debate. He said that Kamala was a no-show at the Fox debate. She refused to do NBC and CBS. So Kamala, in all caps, by the way, Kamala should focus on what she should have been doing almost the last 4-year period. There will be no third debate. So, Chris, is this a good move for Donald Trump? I mean, we did see the 3-against-1 that has been the narrative since the debate has ended. So is this what you would suggest for Donald Trump?
Well, I'm sitting here a little chastened because I began this week thinking that the House of Representatives had actually grown a pair and that Donald Trump was probably going to do really well in his debate against Kamala Harris. And it was smart to take that. And eventually, even when you're in this business of punditry where there are basically no consequences for being completely wrong, you have to have a little bit of reflection on this. But I am surprised because I think that this is something that Donald Trump ought to have taken. We know that when he's on his game, he is capable of being a master debater. I mean, someone who's actually someone who has changed the whole way that politics are discussed. Someone who's made so that normal political debates are honestly just completely boring. No one's going to want to watch them anymore. And he did get some decent poll results. There have been some bumps, as one poll said in Michigan, but largely Kamala Harris took more. I kind of think that maybe he just doesn't want to do the practice. Maybe he just doesn't want to do the work. I mean, the man is a 78-year-old billionaire. It's hard to tell any 78-year-old what to do. He's obviously got a little bit of stubbornness to him. And if he wants to insist that he won, then that's fine. And I don't think it's going to move the dial. Debates actually typically rarely, except for his debate against Joe Biden, really move the dial that much in a meaningful way. But I was looking forward to a rematch.
I was too, Chris Bedford. Thanks so much for joining us here today. We'll just have to wait, Matthew. We'll have to wait for something else that we can get from Donald Trump to just go out there and give us what we're going to be missing in this not third debate.
Yeah, I mean, I still wonder about even whether that remains the same and there isn't another debate, but there will be many more moments of explosive excitement in this campaign.
The winds could change at any moment. We'll expose how the EU is cramming down on woke policies for American companies coming up next. We all know that government healthcare sucks, and nobody wants to deal with it if they don't have to. So what else can you do? Well, Lassie Health is not health insurance. It's access to the healthcare that you want without all the red tape, all the restrictions, and the inflated costs. But coverage just starts at $30 a month. And so with that, you can get transparent pricing, comprehensive coverage tailored for your needs and that of your family, and the access to the healthcare services that you want without breaking the bank. And there's no annual or lifetime cap on services, and you can start the plan at any time. So with this, what do you get? Well, you get over 400 prescription medications for free unlimited virtual mental health counseling, and 24/7 virtual urgent care, all included. Up to 60% off lab tests, 75% off for image testing, and surgeries and procedures up to 50% off. So Lassie Health is a game changer. Check out affordable plans that put you in control of your healthcare at healthylink.com/blaze. For a limited time, get your first month free, up to $100 off eligible plans. So get healthy, be healthy, and stay healthy without breaking the bank at healthylink.com/blaze. U.S. businesses that operate overseas might be in for a woke awakening. A new European law is set to impose woke regulations, forcing American companies to adopt strict rules around ESG if they want to keep doing business in Europe. So here to break down what this all means for the glowing crash between traditional business practices and progressive policies is Justin Haskins, director of the Socialism Research Center for the Heartland Institute and co-author of Dark Future, Uncovering the Great Reset's Terrifying Next Phase. So Justin, thanks for being here. I mean, let's go into these woke rules, or the ESG metrics that they're trying to place on American businesses doing all that business overseas.
Yeah, I mean, this is absolutely an incredible story. Earlier this year in May, the European Union finally passed a law called the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, which is a really sexy title, I know.
Yeah, it's going to get a lot of people.
But it's incredibly radical. Essentially what it does is it forces large companies that are headquartered in the European Union or that operate above a certain revenue threshold in the European Union, including a lot of American companies like Apple and Meta and Microsoft and McDonald's and all sorts of companies like that, PepsiCo. It forces them to adopt left-wing social credit scoring metrics to completely transform the kinds of products and services that they can offer, who they can hire, what their board of directors looks like, what are their goals and initiatives. This is an incredibly radical policy because obviously it's going to change how all of the world is operating, not just how these companies are operating. Because if you can change what products and services people are providing, if you change hiring practices, you're changing the culture. But it gets even worse than that. Not only does it do this to these large companies, again, like McDonald's and Apple and Ford and companies like that, but it also requires them to force these policies on their business partners that are much smaller, no matter where they're located. So in other words, if you're a potato farmer in Idaho, you have to adhere to these rules because you sell potatoes to McDonald's to make French fries. Even if you're small, even if you're just a truck driver who drives McDonald's products around or something like that, you make a tiny little component for a car, like for Ford, for example, and you're a manufacturer in Ohio, you will have to adhere to this too, because Ford or McDonald's or whoever these large companies are, in order to avoid this massive fine of 5% of their net worldwide turnover, which is essentially revenue in the European Union, has to impose it on you. So through contractual assurances and things like that. So it's a way of transforming all of society, not just the big companies, but the small companies too, and all the products and services and the ways that they operate. So just the ramifications on energy and because there's all kinds of crazy climate change stuff that's in this, that alone is going to destroy our economy. And it's been passed into law. It's going to be rolled out over the next few years. And unless we have a president who's going to push back against it, it is going to be our reality.
Justin, so you should know that we've started a lifestyle vertical called Align. We have branded segments for Align on this show, as our audience knows. And one of the biggest things that we want to do there is just alert people to companies and products and services from people who don't hate them and who aren't doing this stuff, and also let people know the lay of the land and have discussions like this so they understand how all of our money, billions, if not trillions of dollars, is being hijacked, right, by these companies. So this is a topic that's very important to us and all of our audience. How do you get out of this? I mean, how are they going to punish foreign companies? First off, if it's France, right, how are they going to punish our companies? And then what is the path around this whole thing?
Right. So the punishment is 5% of your net worldwide turnover. So for a company like Apple, that would be $19 billion based on their revenue generated in the last 12 months. Okay. So $19 billion fine if they don't do this. If they refuse, then they can't operate in the European Union anymore. So they're giving up billions and billions and billions of dollars in revenue from the European Union, which is why these companies are eager to do this, because they want to stay in these markets. Smaller businesses won't be punished by the European Union. They're going to be punished by the large company that operates in the European Union. So the Apples of the world and Microsoft and companies like that, they will have to force these companies to do it, or else they get fined. So they'll just drop you as a business partner if you refuse to comply. That's how this is all going to work. And it's not just in the United States, it's all over the world that this is happening. And one of the craziest parts of the story, which is included in the article that I wrote for Blaze Media, is that there's this one, it's a huge bill or a huge piece of legislation. There's this one long paragraph buried in it that says that what if a company, a small business partner somewhere in the world, China or wherever, says, I'm not doing this. Like, no, I can't afford it. It'll crush me. It'll kill me if I do this. What happens then? Well, do you have selective enforcement? What is the ramifications of that? Well, the answer is, in this one paragraph, it says that the large company that's covered under this law, so Ford, Microsoft, etc., has to pay for that smaller foreign company to make the transition to be in compliance with the EU law. So if you have to have electric vehicles, that's part of the rules, and you refuse, some company in China, then the company, the American company potentially, or wherever that company is based, has to pay for that transition to occur. So we're talking about, when you look at the entire world and all of the companies that are doing business up and down the supply chains, we're talking about hundreds of billions, maybe trillions of dollars of a wealth transfer from the United States to others. And who do you think is going to pay for that? These big companies just going to eat the losses? No, they're going to raise prices, and it's going to crush our economy.
It sounds very expensive. So you're the ESG guy. You've literally written the books on it. So let's bring it back now to America. And I want an update, just personally, on what states are pushing back and doing well against ESG, that the red states that people would expect, and what states need to really step their game up right now.
Yeah, so a whole bunch of states, I mean, probably over 20 states have done something on ESG. A lot of it has to do with divesting from ESG causes with state pensions and things like that. That's a pretty weak approach, in my opinion. It does put a little bit of pressure, but the blue liberal states that love ESG have much bigger pensions than the red states that don't. So it's not a good strategy. There are 2 states that have done really, really good pieces of legislation on it. One is Florida, probably unsurprisingly, and the other is Tennessee this past year. What they've done is they've come in and said you can't use social credit scores, non-financial related social credit scoring, to screen people out of banking and financial institutions, insurance, things like that. And so Florida has the toughest law on that. They prohibit banks from engaging in that kind of activity, because this was a huge part of the problem. Banks would go and say, we're just not going to do business with gun companies because we don't like gun companies. We don't care if they're good business partners. We don't care if they can pay back their loans. And so Florida passed a law prohibiting that. Tennessee did a slightly weaker version of it, but they also passed a law like that. And so if every state in the country, or at least every red state, I guess that would be the reasonable thing, passed a law like Florida's law, it would go a long way toward protecting individuals from the ESG threat.
Absolutely. Hugely important. And there's so much more that could be done there. I mean, there really is a lot of hope, I would say, out there. One thing I just want to mention, we're not going to talk about it, but you need to think about it. We all need to think about it is the Texas Stock Exchange, which potentially will allow people to trade without any of the rules, any of the ESG and woke rules. But there's something that's even more important to talk about right now, and that's this election. You had mentioned before coming on that ranked choice voting is on the ballot in many red states, and people out there need to know how dangerous this is and what it's done to many states.
Yeah. So ranked choice voting is on the surface seems like a really innocuous proposal. It's being put on the ballot through ballot initiatives. In Arizona is looking at it. Montana has kind of a version of that that they're looking at. They actually have it already in law in Maine and Alaska. Alaska's trying to get rid of it because the conservatives there hate it. Idaho is another deep red state that's taking a look at it. Oregon is a blue state, Washington, D.C. So what is it exactly? It changes the way that elections are run. Under the current system, you have an office, you have people run for it, whoever gets the most votes wins. It's really simple. Under ranked choice voting, that's not how it works. What you do is you rank all the candidates. So you essentially vote for the candidates, all of them, and you put them in preference, in your order of preference. If nobody gets 50%, above 50% of first preference ballots, then what they do is they eliminate the lowest rung candidates, the ones who did the worst, and then they reassign them to the candidates at the top based on second, third, fourth preferences of the voters. And then what the left has figured out is if we couple this with open primaries, so we don't have a Republican primary and a Democrat primary, we have all the candidates in one big primary, and then the top four candidates all end up on the ballot, then what you end up with is in deep red states, you'll get 2 or 3 Republicans on the ballot along with 1 Democrat. And what Democrats have realized is this works out really well for them because they rank the Republican vote is split. The Democrats all vote for the Democrat as their first preference. Then they pick the most liberal Republican they can find as their second preference. The other liberal Republicans pick that one as well. And you end up with a liberal Republican or even a Democrat.
That's why many red states are so liberal.
Justin, my night was a lot better before you came on, but I do appreciate you bringing all the info to us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Our next guest will explain why an election won't immediately cure the problems that are all plaguing this country. Just ahead. You probably have uncomfortable sheets on your bed that you've been sleeping in for years. And honestly, go get yourself a Cozy Earth best-selling bamboo sheet set. Now, I have them, and I can attest to you that they are the most comfortable, breathable. They have the temperature controlling, so they're cool in the summer and hot in the winter. And in fact, they get softer every single time you wash them. And Cozy Earth is all about turning your home into a personal sanctuary where you can escape just that hustle and bustle of daily life. And it's, my bedroom. I just want that to be the perfect place to unwind. And in case you're on the fence, well, Cozy Earth, all of their products come with a 100-night sleep trial. So if you're not completely satisfied in over 3 months, then you can still return them for a full refund. And while you're at it, go ahead and check out. They have awesome pajama sweatpants as well. They're incredible. So your peace of mind matters. And make a wise choice this election season. Embrace the comfort of Cozy Earth and feel the difference. Go to CozyEarth.com/Jill and use code Jill for an exclusive discount up to 40% off. If you find a post-purchase survey, say that you heard about Cozy Earth from this show. We've all heard the claims that should Trump win, America will be turned into a fascist, white supremacist empire. Now, some have speculated that this inflammatory rhetoric led to the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. But if Trump does win, will the problems that are driving this extreme political divide just vanish? Here to discuss it is Adam Ellwanger, professor and Claremont Institute fellow. So Adam, thanks so much for joining us. So what do you think? How much impact does the election actually have on the American people?
Well, I think the election will be huge, obviously. But I think there's kind of a fantasizing that both sides want to believe. I think that the left wants to believe that if they vanquish MAGA this time, then we're back to the status quo of pre-2014, and it'll be kind of soft Obamaism forever. Conversely, I think that those of us on the right want to believe that if we win this time, right, then we can do what we really wanted to do last time, and then we'll have sort of peace, prosperity, and we can turn the page. I don't think that there will be a turning of the page regardless of the outcome.
Yeah, Adam, can we talk a little bit more about that? I mean, because one of the things that I like to say, and maybe we say that we're saying the same things, is that, no matter who wins, Donald Trump can't save you. Sadly, there's a lot of good he can do, but I guess the way I would put it is he will prevent a lot of things and maybe start moving things in another direction. But this isn't a light switch you just flip on for a variety of reasons. Is that sort of what you believe? And could you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think that's close to what I believe. And in fact, I do think that there's a light switch. We on the right just don't get to control it. For example, we saw this switch flipped when Donald Trump came into office last time. Somebody flipped the main breaker in the box, and none of the powers of the executive branch worked for 4 years. Now, those breakers turn back on when we get a Democrat in the White House, and all of a sudden the wheels start turning again. That said, I don't think that even a Trump loss here would destroy the populist movement that's been built. In fact, I think it would possibly come out of a loss this election in a stronger place. And conversely, in the event that Trump wins, they will try to flip that breaker again. They might not have as much success this time. Some of the breakers may stay on. Hopefully, we've learned something since 2017. But there will still be a very entrenched institutional element that will do whatever they can to ensure that Trump's impact is limited for a second term.
Now, we've been talking a ton about the media because we just got off of the presidential debate with Trump and Kamala Harris. So what role, overall, do you see the media playing in the way that they've been shaping the narrative, especially this time around?
Just before I talked to y'all, I got off of a program that is aired in the Arab world, and they kept quoting the New York Times as they talked about the state of the election. And I had to explain to them that they're quoting effectively state media, which they seemed somewhat surprised by. I think that I've seen some people say that Kamala won the debate the other night. I don't know if that's true. It didn't seem that way to me. But even if it were true, I mean, it's clear to anyone's eye that Trump had to fight a 3-on-1 fight all night. And in the various fact checkings live during the debate, I think that we've already sort of debunked all of those debunkings at this point, haven't we? I mean, I don't want to talk about pets too much, but I think we've seen a lot of evidence even since this past Tuesday of that. It's true that we do have abortion up to the 9th month in certain states. And the idea that the economy is somehow better under Biden-Harris is just preposterous.
Yeah, Adam, I mean, in this, I want to make clear to our audience that this opinion piece you wrote for theblaze.com is titled "Our Crisis Will Endure, Regardless of Who Wins in November." So you are saying and firmly believe there is a very deep crisis that's unfolding in this nation and that everyone should be concerned about. It's just that there's no simple answer no matter who wins. So what do you think the solution is moving forward? How should people look at November and beyond when it comes to trying to fix this country?
I think that people, especially on the right, need to keep some emotional reserves and hold some resources back. Because in all likelihood, there will be another fight immediately on the horizon, even if we win in a clear victory on election night. I will draw a football analogy. I hope that doesn't bother too many viewers, but I can remember when the Giants beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl for the 2007 season, after the Patriots had already won 3 Super Bowls and gone undefeated that season. When I watched the Giants win, I thought, that's it. The head's off the dragon. We're done with the Patriots. They can't possibly come back from this. And they went on to win 3 more Super Bowls, which made each of those more agonizing than the last, because I had expected that this dynasty was over, right? This fight will not end. And so we can't go for broke right now. We need to do everything within our power to win this election, but we also have to consider how resources are spent, because even in the best case scenario, the fight doesn't end on November 6th or 7th.
See, this is why I like my Claremont fellows, like Adam. I used to run the Claremont programs, and Adam's a Claremont Institute fellow, but also a professor who can talk about football and teach media, rhetoric, and politics. We like it.
That's the best. And Adam, I used to be a sports reporter, so I do appreciate that. And the Dolphins got to pop the champagne bottles there at the end of the season. So thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
And Peterson, when you come to it, it's not going to stabilize our political situation in just one election. We know already we're too far down this path.
Yeah, we need to and quickly consider, if you're out there, think about Trump wins and the left throws the country into chaos for possibly months afterwards. And of course, throughout the entirety, they're going to try to undermine his presidency just like they did last time. And you flip it and, it's not going to be good. The right has to band together in an even deeper way. So volatility will increase, but that's okay. We already know that's going to happen, and we're still going to fight and win.
Baked into the cake. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, Bill Gates proposes misinformation can be stopped with digital IDs, and we'll explain just how terrifying that is ahead. Bill Gates recently hinted that he would like to see online speech shaped to curb misinformation by ensuring that people are truly identified online. The online environment described by Gates seems to require some sort of digital ID. Here to discuss is Peter Giedel, managing editor for Return and Frontier magazine. And Peter, let's go into this. What impact would this all have to have for the online community to have digital IDs for everyday Americans?
Well, I mean, we don't have to imagine, we don't have to extrapolate. We see it every single day right now in China. They have a version of digital ID in order to do anything online. And I mean, everything, all banking, commerce, job is all tied to a single online ID that the government gives you. And if they decide that you're saying the wrong things or they want to turn off that digital ID, you have no recourse. So we already see what it could look like and what they're building towards.
So how do we cut this off at the pass? I mean, maybe before we even get there, isn't it already the case that we sort of have digital IDs here, right? Isn't it building here? Like, it's not official. The government doesn't have it, but we all can be traced, tracked, and presumably punished if some powerful entity wanted to.
Yes, that absolutely exists. And I mean, we already know, the credit card companies, a lot of these places have been building this digital ID structure kind of in the background. They haven't had the ability or the will yet to roll it out in a way of like, we're going to start censoring people and tying this ID to everything that you do on the internet. And that's what's disturbing of what Gates is advocating, is he's describing being tied to a single ID to use the internet, and that would make it much more easy to track people and control, even though they do track and generally know what you're doing online.
Now, we know that this came about in a big way in COVID. They tried to push this through. Thankfully, it didn't happen. We were able to successfully push it off for a little while longer, but now they're bringing it back around. They're circling back to digital IDs. Is there any reason that right now is the time, or they just really want to push this through, and so they're just giving it another attempt?
I think it's probably the latter. They really want to push this through. they know that even if they lose at one time, they keep at it, they keep pushing it. And it's an excellent point you're bringing up about COVID. Is they tried to bring this out, and once again, who was behind a lot of those? A lot of those push was Bill Gates and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And I mean, Return did reporting earlier in the year about they're rolling this out in Africa as a digital ID pass. And unfortunately, a lot of the really scary stuff they kind of test in Africa because they know that the media doesn't really report on these things. And it's a great way to see how it operates in a society. So it is, and Gates was behind that with MasterCard. So it is really scary.
I mean, it is scary. And here's what's scary to me, and I'm curious what you think. Will people just accept this? I mean, it seems like things that were unimaginable, right? Not that many years ago, that you would never say. You'd never say yes to the table, the table of contents. You wouldn't say yes to, being tracked in all these ways, but yet we do. So are people just going to go along with this in the West at some point and say, oh yeah, we all need our digital pass, of course, safety?
Well, I mean, for the most part, we've seen on the internet that people are very happy to sacrifice their freedom in exchange for security, or even more importantly, convenience. However, I mean, Blaze audience, a lot of different audiences left and right are really starting to wake up about some of the dangers of this. And I think that if there is a core constituency of people on the right and the left that are recognize this for what this is, which is a monopolistic, globalistic, corporate control of your life, if enough people are willing to fight against it and are just like, I'm not going to participate in it, I think it does make adoption a lot harder than they would want it to be.
But you have to win every single time, right? They're going to push this up. We know if Bill Gates is behind this, right? Whether it was COVID, right now, 5 years in the future, they're going to keep trying this. So the American people, to Matt's point, have to have that energy to fight it every single time.
Yeah, and there are ways in which we can fight it, right? I mean, we do have ways in which, and that's what Return is about, showing people alternative paths. So at least you can get ahead of this stuff before God knows what happens.
Peter, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jill.
When we come back, authorities in Colorado pay more attention to parody street signs than the illegal aliens. We literally can't make this one up. Don't go anywhere. Colorado residents have been warning of a Venezuelan gang takeover, and in the last few weeks, street signs have been popping up in Aurora, Colorado, with messages like "Caution, Kamala's illegals," and "Blacks must sit at the back of the bus, Kamala's migrants sit in the front." And so we thought we'd go out to a man who has been known for some awesome political artwork of his own over the last few years. Sabo, he's a political guerrilla artist. So what do you make of what's going on in Aurora, Colorado right now?
I think what's going on in Aurora is crazy. Everyone thinks you're supposed to drive down the street and see like gang members with rifles on the roofs. It's not quite that way. Aurora's a big place. The place that's being affected is where the blacks and the minorities live. The comfortable rich places aren't being touched at all.
Yeah, I mean, what do you make of this? I mean, the Venezuelan gangs, right, in this city, in certain areas. Have you seen any of this with your own eyes, or just watching the videos like the rest of us? I live in Aurora, so I drive around all the time. I see tons of migrants. I mean, none of them have a Tren de Aragua shirt or anything like that, but I can tell that a lot of these people are very young and they seem very desperate. This time last year, during the winter time, they dropped off like 30,000 when it was about minus 10 degrees. So they were very desperate people, and many of these women were, from what I understand, prostituting themselves just to not freeze or starve to death.
Now, we know you, basically I did, when I learned about you, was the Ted Cruz creation, that you had that art piece of Ted Cruz back in the day. And I'm curious to just get your take on the left versus the right with some of the artwork that you see with the street artwork that's been out there, and how just the different sides are going about and reacting to it.
To the art?
Yeah.
I believe the art's being used to just distract people. You have this really horrible thing that's going on in Aurora, and I truly believe those signs were used to say, hey, look at the racist over here, and don't look at what's going on. You have to consider the leadership in Colorado. On one hand, they're saying, let's have a task force to take on these gangs, while on the other hand, you have the governor saying, it's all a figment of everyone's imagination.
So very curious. By the way, the Ted Cruz poster, right, is iconic, and I bring it up all the time as an example. And I'm sure there's all kinds of politicians out there who say, I wish I had one of those, right? Almost every election cycle ever since that appeared. But we're in a week in which I'd love to get your thoughts on some artwork that we've seen all over the internet. I hesitate to call it artwork, but there's a lot of AI cats and dogs and geese online because of another city where something similar is apparently going down. There's 20,000 Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio, right? And within a few days, you had really, high-ranking politicians sharing memes, the governor saying he was going to send in the state police. What do you make of what's going on in Springfield, Ohio?
I think it's crazy. Here in Aurora, you have flocks of geese during the, I guess, migrating south or something. I'm waiting to see it happen here. Don't get me wrong. I go into these parks and I go, my God, wouldn't those taste nice? And when you consider, I'm serious, these are geese. Mm-hmm. And, when you consider the price of groceries today, I mean, a grocery cart will run to what, $300? These people have, I would say these people have nothing, but, they say that these signs that came up in Denver will divide the Black and the migrant communities. I say that Kamala's failed policies are dividing the Black and the migrant communities, because the Black people in Chicago are seeing migrants have EBT cards with $13,000 for food, whereas Black homeless, veterans, they have nothing. So, I mean, as far as the geese go, or the cats or the dogs, that's just food, man. People got to eat.
Hey, a lot of truth to that. I want everyone to know that when Sabo strikes, we try to report that at theblaze.com. And Sabo, you should let everyone know where people are interested in what you do. They can go and support you.
Yeah, I have a website, unsavoryagents.com. And, I usually sometimes ask to recoup what projects cost, but I could really use your help right now. I have a donate link on my website, unsavoryagents.com, and you can help me out there.
Sabo, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and all the artwork that you do put out there.
All right, well, thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
And Matthew, it is an important way to just go through and reach different people, right? Like, some people are going to sit there and read the articles, but some people are only going to see, the guerrilla artwork, the memes that are online. It's another way of reaching people where they are.
Yeah, I think it's one of the only ways that you really wake people up. And the weird thing is that on the right, for some reason, people think you can't or shouldn't do this kind of stuff. I mean, it's really bad. Whereas the left does it all the time because it's how you grab attention. It's how you provoke controversy and point to awkward, uncomfortable truths. So we need more of that.
Well, one of the things that I've seen, and people have been putting this online, is it's unreal that people really aren't moved by some of the baby killings, the abortion, all that, but you get the cat in Ohio, and people really have gravitated towards this, and it is because you can reach them in another way. There's not going, you can't put anything out about horrendous baby killing. That is not going to reach them at a place like this, where you can use humor to cut through a ton of that uncomfortability.
Yes, and look, the sad truth is, if you just talked about the plight of the people in Springfield, Ohio, and what they're actually going through, no one would pay attention. But you talk about the cat memes, and possibly people are eating pets, and that is the meme that started it all, and now people are paying attention to the plight of real people and real deaths in Springfield.
And the person who doesn't care about the plight of real people, we were talking about Bill Gates earlier on the show today, and ESG, and they kind of just go together because they want to force us into whatever little circle they want. Much like, okay, we're just going to drop the Haitian migrants in a town of 60,000 people. You're going to get 20,000 migrants. Well, now Bill Gates and ESG and everything else, they're trying to say, okay, this is what we're going to have you do. And you basically have to have a solid red state to get out of it.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm going to control what you buy. I'm going to take your money when you buy things that you need almost as a tax and use it for the political purposes that I have over here. You're going to like it. You're going to be forced to do it. And then if you don't say, if you're not freedom of speech is freedom of thought. You're not free to speak and say what you want, or we'll get you right off the digital grid. And so all of that is happening. And more what you see is the power of red states is the only place where we can actually affect change. And the ESG stuff is really important. You have these enormous pension funds, right, with billions of dollars. You can make sure that money in red states is not going to big woke corporate, but instead going to people who actually will go to bat for the American people. There's a whole lot that red states can do, including as Texas, I hope, does soon, to create its own stock exchange. I mean, it won't have all the woke strictures of the New York one. So there's enormous possibility in red states, but we all have to press for it and we have to act.
Well, we have to act. We have to press for it. But we also feel, especially this week, I feel like the people that said Kamala Harris won, even though if they're Republicans, they would look at it and say, oh, maybe Donald Trump didn't do as well. But every single week leading up to the election and beyond, people are going to feel that chaos. We open the show saying, welcome to the chaos. But it's important for people not to freak out. Yes. And know that we're all in this together.
Yeah, I think once you know that, welcome to the chaos every night, it's going to be chaos with us every night. You're going to see the chaos around. Volatility will increase. But that also allows you to plan for it. It allows you to think about, what should I do to maintain a healthy lifestyle and stay happy in the midst of the madness? People lived through 2 world wars and a Great Depression in the last century and saw all kinds of crazy stuff, and they still lived a happy life, and we can too.
We made it out. We made it out. We can do it again. But you know what? I just look at it and say, I'm the person that would rather know all of the information. And so that's why I love just coming here, reading the stories and bringing them to our audience every single night.
Oh, yeah. And we're just not going to talk about what's going on. We're going to talk about what we should be doing and how we can get through all of this together.
Well, and if you like this, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to rate and review the show. It helps everybody else out there to find it. And we'll be back with more of the chaos tomorrow night.